Hi guys, and welcome back to part 2 of Imperial Fists. I apologise for the wait on this one for those who were waiting on it. I had a nice breakaway and bruises, so that's why there's been a bit of a delay on this one. So straight in with the tutorial as usual. All I've done is I've fixed up the eye that I messed up in part 1, and then straight onto all of the leather pouches, just using snakebite leather out of the pot, because as I've mentioned before, I love this colour. And it's one of those that I feel you can just use straight out the pot. Okay, so now we're on to the armour joints, the seals. So we're just using a watered down black Templar here, 1 part black Templar, 1 part contrast medium, and we're going to also apply this to the bolter as well. And as you can see, we just manipulate this whilst it is still wet, and just make sure we get the shadows where we want them. If you make any mistakes like here, just get straight in there with water and you can just wash that off immediately, and you shouldn't be left with any staining at all, as you can see with this gauntlet. And we're just going back in for a second coat where we want it to be darker, like on the bolter here, missing the edges for the hat to leave highlights in place. I wasn't too happy with the contrast that I got with this red originally, so I'm just going back in there with a little bit of Agrax in choice places just to darken that, so we get a better contrast between the highlight and the base colour. So we're just adding this to the recesses, and also we're going to add a little bit of directional light onto the pauldrons, the rims of the pauldrons, just so it looks like there's light sourcing on those. So just onto the parts that I want to do with a non-metallic steel. I always like to mix Space Wolves Grey and Skeleton Horde because it makes a real nice sort of gunmetal colour. So that's what we've got here. We're just applying the first coat all over the parts we want metal. Right, so I've really slowed this part down because I really wanted to show people the brushwork on this. When doing non-metallic metal, like this part, or when I've done the gold in the previous videos, I just wanted to show that you don't need to be that neat. You can just, with a rough brush stroke here, a rough brush stroke there, you can really give the impression of detail. Shadows and reflections rarely have really defined edges, and so we just want to create as much noise as possible on these areas to make it look more natural, as if reflections from different areas, different darknesses are hitting these places. Right, so onto the parchment, and we're just using pure Skeleton Horde. So once I've applied this liberal coat of it as well, what I'll then do is I'll start to remove paints from the higher raised areas, and as you will see in a moment, I will even, once the brush is dried, I'll even make sure the bristles are spread. You don't need a point for this part. As a matter of fact, the more spread your bristles are, the more you drag some of that paint off, you'll be left with streaks and marks on there, which will, yet again, as said with the metal, will give the impression that there's writing or there's marks on this parchment. Obviously you want to do this you want to drag the brush in the direction that you would expect writing to be. So horizontal along these seals, oaths of the moment, I think. And once I've done that, then what I'll do is once that's dried, I will go back in with a second coat to some of the darker recesses to then give the shadow, give a little bit more shadow to this parchment. Just adding a little bit more of black Templar to the armour seals just to get a bit more light sourcing and make it look like these are cylindrical. So that's pretty much the tutorial done. I'm leaving in a little bit extra here where I'm just doing some of the finer details. I'm not putting the colours in here because I like people to make their own choices on these little finer details. One thing I will say is I did go back into the helmet lenses with a little Talisar blue to darken up just the top of the lens there, because I didn't think the Athomeric blue gave enough of a glass stroke, sort of reflective quality. And as you can see when I'm doing the little display panel, the LCD on his arm, I'm using warp lightning there. You don't necessarily need to cover the entire area. You can leave edge highlights of the wraith bone there, and that can be really effective. So yeah, that brings us to a close. Definitely not one of my best paint jobs, this. I'll probably revisit this colour scheme again in the future. I made a lot of mistakes on this, bad day painting, I think I mentioned in the first part, but enjoyable nonetheless. I hope you've enjoyed it. Feel free to drop comments and like if you did, and hopefully see you in the next tutorial. Thank you very much.